No one could fix the millionaire's Mustang until a little black girl stepped forward. But when he saw the ring on her finger, the world froze. Engines roared all around the city streets, but one sound stood out above all others. Silence. A silence born from disbelief. Because the most powerful man in town, a millionaire known for his wealth, his pride, his flawless image, now stood helpless beside his broken-down Mustang. Crowds gathered, mechanics rushed in, onlookers whispered. Each man who approached swore he had the answer, claimed he could bring the beast of a car back to life. But one by one they failed. Tools clattered uselessly. Wires sparked with frustration. Sweat dripped from brows. Yet the Mustang remained dead. And with every passing second, the laughter grew. The mighty had fallen, and people reveled in the sight of power brought low. The millionaire clenched his jaw, his pride burning hotter than the engine that refused to start. He had built empires, commanded boardrooms, crushed rivals without breaking a sweat. Yet here on the open street, he was nothing but a man with a car that would not move. And worse, his expensive team of so-called experts looked like fools before the crowd. And then it happened. From between the legs of the crowd stepped someone no one expected. Small, unnoticed, almost invisible. A girl, no more than 6 years old. Her shoes scuffed, her dress plain, her face smudged with the dust of the streets. A little black girl, eyes wide with something no mechanic had yet shown. Quiet certainty. She walked forward, clutching a small toy in one hand and something shining faintly on the other. A simple, worn ring. At first the crowd erupted in laughter. Men sneered, voices rising with cruel mockery. "Move aside, child. This isn't a game. What can she do that grown men couldn't? This isn't playtime, little one." But she didn't flinch. She didn't turn back. Instead, she tilted her head toward the car, listening. Not to the taunts, not to the arrogance, but to the silence of the machine itself. Her small hands brushed against the hood, her dark eyes narrowing in focus. She tapped lightly, listening to the hollow echo, as though the Mustang were whispering secrets only she could hear. The millionaire, at first frowning, found his expression softening. There was something in her presence, something different. He crossed his arms, intrigued despite himself, and gave a single nod. Against all reason, against the mockery of every man around him, he let the girl step closer. The crowd hushed. A child against a machine. A child against pride. She knelt down, peering beneath the car. Her small fingers traced a cable, tugging gently, adjusting with instinct that baffled every adult present. Then she rose, brushed her hands on her dress, and whispered just one phrase. "Try it now." The millionaire hesitated, his hand hovering over the key. Could this truly be happening? A child solving what dozens of men had failed to fix? With the weight of the crowd's eyes on him, he turned the ignition. The silence shattered. The Mustang roared back to life, its engine thundering with renewed power, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The crowd gasped, their mockery swallowed by shock. Mechanics, who moments earlier boasted of their skill, now stared in humiliation, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The millionaire, his pride pierced, yet his heart stirred, looked at the girl in awe. But it wasn't the car that left him frozen. It wasn't even the brilliance that seemed to radiate from her tiny frame. It was the ring, that small, simple, worn ring glinting faintly on her little finger. Because in that instant, something impossible clicked inside his mind. Something about that ring told him this was no ordinary child. This wasn't chance. This wasn't luck. This was destiny, and the truth behind that ring would change everything. The Mustang's engine growled like thunder, but in that moment, the sound was nothing compared to the silence of the crowd. Every pair of eyes was locked on the little girl, and on the worn, shining ring upon her finger. The millionaire's jaw tightened, his heart pounding in a way he had not felt in years. He had stood before kings, faced ruthless rivals, and negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. But here, before this small child, he felt something foreign, something almost frightening. Recognition. That ring. He had seen it before. Long ago. His mind raced back through the years. Back to nights of fire and smoke. Back to days when his life was not yet polished by wealth. He remembered a hand, rough, strong, calloused, that wore that very ring. A hand that had once saved his own. The girl, unaware of the storm raging inside him, smiled softly, her innocence shining brighter than any diamond. She looked at the millionaire not with fear, not with awe, but with simple kindness, as if fixing his car had meant nothing more than helping a neighbor in need. But for him, it meant everything. Where did you get that ring? His voice cracked, the weight of decades pressing down on each word. The crowd leaned in, whispers rippling like waves. The mechanics shifted uneasily, their arrogance shattered, their pride dissolved. The girl glanced down at the small circle of metal hugging her finger. She turned it gently, as though it were nothing special. Then, in her soft voice, she said the words that made the millionaire's blood run cold. "It was my father's." The air froze. The millionaire staggered, his chest tightening, memories clawing at him. He remembered that man, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that burned like fire and a heart as unyielding as stone. The janitor. The one no one respected, no one saw. The one who had once pulled a young, foolish man from the brink of ruin. And now, his daughter stood before him. The millionaire's face hardened. The ring wasn't just a symbol of family. It was a symbol of sacrifice, of a debt unpaid, of a truth buried too long. The crowd could sense something shifting. They didn't know what the ring meant, but they could feel the electricity in the air. The millionaire, so untouchable, so untamable, looked shaken, vulnerable, almost broken. And yet there was more. For if this child truly carried the legacy of the man who once saved him, then she was not just some street girl. She was a reminder, a warning, a reckoning. Slowly, the millionaire dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her level. His hand trembled as he reached toward the ring, his eyes locked on hers. But before he could speak, before he could even breathe, the little girl whispered something that no one expected, words that would send shivers through the entire crowd. "He told me one day I would find the man with a broken Mustang. And when I did, I must tell him the truth." Gasps erupted. Faces turned pale. The millionaire's breath caught in his throat. The truth? What truth? The millionaire's world began to crumble. Because in his heart, he already knew whatever came next would not only change his life, it would expose secrets he had spent years trying to bury. The car was fixed, but now, the man himself was about to be broken. The silence of the street was deafening. Engines idled, conversations died, and all eyes fixed on the little girl clutching the wrench in one hand, the ring glinting on the other. The millionaire's pulse thundered in his ears. He could not move, could not speak, as her words echoed inside his head. "He told me one day I would find the man with a broken Mustang. And when I did, I must tell him the truth." The crowd leaned forward, hungry for what would come next. The girl's eyes, wide but steady, pierced into him. Her voice was soft, but each syllable struck like a hammer. "My father said you were not just a man with wealth, but a man with a debt. He said once he saved your life. And one day, it would be my turn to remind you who you really are." The millionaire's chest heaved. Memories clawed at him like ghosts. A burning building, smoke choking his lungs, flames devouring everything, and a man's hand, rough, scarred, wearing that very ring, dragging him out from the inferno when no one else would dare. He had lived because of that man. And then, when fortune found him, he had forgotten. Forgotten the janitor who risked everything. Forgotten the man the world mocked, ignored, and overlooked. But fate had not forgotten. And now his daughter stood before him, carrying not only his memory, but his message. The millionaire dropped to both knees, his tailored suit brushing against the dirt. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in disbelief. A man of such power, bowing to a child? Yet he knew there was no other choice. His voice trembled. "Your father was a hero, and I buried that truth. But today you have brought it back to life." The little girl tilted her head, her innocence cutting through the weight of the moment. "He said you would need reminding. That money makes men blind. But honor makes them see." Tears burned the corners of the millionaire's eyes. For years he had thought wealth gave him everything. But now, faced with the ring, the daughter, and the truth, he realized what he lacked was far greater: gratitude. He clasped her tiny hands in his. His voice steadied, stronger now, carrying through the stunned crowd. "From this day forward, I will honor the man who gave me my life, by giving you everything I never gave him. The crowd erupted, some in shock, some in awe. The mechanics, humbled and broken, lowered their heads. They too understood. This was no ordinary girl. She was a living reminder that greatness does not come from power, but from sacrifice. The millionaire stood, his arm gently resting on her shoulder, the ring between them glimmering in the fading sun. His next words silenced everyone once again. "This child is not a stranger. She is my family now." And in that single declaration, the world shifted. The Mustang roared back to life, but it was no longer the center of attention. The true engine that moved hearts was the bond between a forgotten janitor, his daughter, and a man who finally saw the light. The millionaire had thought he owned everything. But today, he discovered the one thing he had been missing: redemption. And it came not from wealth, not from power, but from a little black girl with a ring on her finger and a truth too powerful to ignore.